Good.
All right, so my name is Hunter Doerksen. I've had the good luck to travel to China the last 2 summers and work at the B.C. Dolphinarium in Wuhan, China. So I'm here to talk to you about some of the conservation efforts that are going on in China to conserve the Yangtze Finless porpoise. So the Yangtze Finless porpoise is variously considered a subspecies or a full species by different researchers, and it is found in the lower 1,400 kilometers of the Yangtze River, following the Yangtze Gorges, where you find the large hydro dams, such as the Three Gorges Dam. So it is facing a lot of threats from human development throughout its range, such as fishing and bycatch, the aforementioned damming, which alters the habitat and destroys some. It suffers increasing vessel noise and vessel presence throughout its range as China is developing. And it also has, in a lot of the lakes that it inhabits that are connected to the rivers, it has sand dredging that it has to worry about. So all of these things are leading to a decline in the population of the Yangtze Finless porpoise as the economy of China increases. So what are they doing to conserve these animals? So in the river itself, they are starting to regulate the sand dredging in the main lakes, which are connected, so the Dongting and Poyang lakes, which you may have seen labeled on the map earlier. They're also starting to implement fishing bans, both temporary and permanent, in various areas of its range. They're starting to better enforce the fishing regulations, which they weren't doing quite as well before. And they're hoping to start managing the shipping traffic, especially in these areas, which are the reserves that currently have permanent fishing bans in the range. So they also started the world's first ex situ conservation project for cetaceans. It was started back in 1990. And they make use of oxbow lakes off the side of the river. And this was the first one that was opened back in 1990, the Tianzhou Oxbow. It currently has about 75 animals in it after starting with only about 8 to 10. And in 2015, they opened the second one, which was the Huangmiao Oxbow, a few miles east. And it has about 20 animals as of this year. And the most recent self-sufficient reserve that was opened was the Xizang Oxbow, which is quite a jump east if you look at the map there. And it started in 2017 with 11 animals and now is about at 20. There's also a fourth smaller reserve there being run, but it is not a self-sufficient reserve. They actually have fishermen there from the community taking care of the animals in this small canal on the island near the city of Tongling. So this is the Tianzhou's population trend since it began. You'll notice that in 2008 there was a sharp drop, and that was because, unfortunately, a surprise winter freeze actually trapped a bunch of the finless porpoises under the surface of the water, and a few of them drowned. But since then, the population has rebounded extremely well and is currently at its level at about 75, as I previously mentioned. So they actually preferably want to increase the number of reserves. They only have 3 self-sufficient ones right now, but they want 5 at least for maximum genetic security, and they want around 200 animals between those 5 different reserves. And finally, they do have a research facility, which is the B.C. Dolphinarium, where I was interning, and it was built in the 90s at the same time that they began this ex situ conservation project. And over its lifespan, it's held 1 Baiji, and it's had multiple finless porpoises over its lifespan. Currently they have 6, 3 males, 3 females. This is the facility there on the coast of Donghu Lake in the middle of Wuhan. And these are just some of the animals that they have living there. So the overall population trend has began. So the first measure was in 1991. The river stem was found to have about 2,500 individuals, but they never measured the lake as far as I can tell. In 2006, that number fell down to 1,800, including with the lakes in that number. And in 2012, it fell down to 1,000. At this point, they were extremely worried that the entire population could be extinct within the next decade at these falling rates. And that is when they started upping the enforcement on these fishing regulations and decreasing the sand dredging in the lakes. And in 2017, the last range-wide survey, they found that the numbers seemed to have stabilized. So there was a small decrease in the river population, but an actual small increase in the lake population. They are actually still worried about habitat fragmentation throughout the river. So in 2012, they found that the mother-calf distributions throughout the river were very patchy, but in 2017 they found evidence that this was improving. So they're going to be looking at that in the next survey in 2022. So this is the overview. They currently have about 1,000 animals in the river and lake system, and they have another 130 in those ex situ reserves, and they're still working on improving that. So I'd like to thank the people who let me come to the facility in the first place to volunteer, and the trainers who let me work with the animals, as well as a few of the students and researchers who made my life in China a bit easier.
Thank you. Any questions? Got a few. Gosh, lots. Let's go to the very back.
The oxbows you're talking about, do they have open access? Are they free to come and go, or do they stay here?
Repeat the question.
They don't.
Repeat the question.
He's asking if the oxbows are open to the river, if they can come and go as they please. So they are not open. A few of them were actually connected originally to the river, but they actually don't want them to be fully connected to the river because of the pollution in the river, all of the development around there. So the oldest oxbow you saw there actually separated from the river back in, I believe, 1976 or 1978, and that water quality was much better back then. So they're thinking that this oxbow represents the ideal environment for these animals, and they don't want them to be going out into the river where they could get hurt.
And I think I saw two other hands at some point. Oh gosh, there's so many hands. I don't want to go to you.
So each oxbow will it become unique genetically then? If it's kind of a closed off
Repeat the question.
section?
So the question was whether the oxbow populations are going to diverge genetically over time. And they do have a management system where they are transferring the individuals between the oxbows to maintain genetic diversity, and as well as occasionally bringing in animals from the river if they need to. So they're hoping to maintain the genetic diversity through that, and also by increasing the population of the oxbow system to hopefully those 200 animals through 5 reserves.
I'll do one last question. Simon, do you have a question?
I was wondering what's the best strategy, do you think, to prevent the finless porpoise going the way of the baiji, which is feared extinct right now, the river dolphin, same area.
Repeat the question.
The question was what is the best method to prevent the finless porpoise from going the same route as the baiji, which went extinct in theoretically 2008. It's a good question. I'm not a big researcher on this topic, but they are primarily looking at reducing the ship traffic and ship noise in the river, as well as increasing reserves, and they actually want to start implementing an entire river system fishing ban for at least a year in the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Hunter.